How you doing, folks? My name's Jesse. Vlog entry number 6, October 29th. What am I working on? Well, I've been working on the past. It's been a rough couple of months, and so I've sought solace in the music of my adolescence. And in this instance, it's this album right here. Mylon Lefevre and Broken Heart Live Forever, or Live Forever. I'm pretty sure both apply. It was released in 1983. For those of you that don't know, Mylon Lefevre was a gospel singer and evangelist. He was born in 1944 in Mississippi to the gospel singing family, the Singing Lefevres. In his late teens, Elvis Presley recorded one of his songs titled Without Him. He had met all of the Beatles. He was friends with George Harrison. He recorded an album with Alvin Lee of 10 years after. He toured with Little Richard. He toured with The Who. He was connected to the Atlanta Rhythm section in some ways. By the late 1970s, he'd done everything that you can do in rock and roll. And unfortunately, he'd also done everything that you can do in rock and roll. And by 1980, he was strung out and he was directionless. He rededicated his life to Christ at a Second Chapter of Acts concert and started a career in contemporary Christian music. Although he wasn't a fan of that term, he remembered back in the early 70s they called it Jesus rock. Now, the album was recorded in July of 1983 at his home church. I'm not sure when it was released, and I'm not sure when I heard it. It was around that time period, probably the fall of 83 or the spring of 84, one of the two. But I do remember where I was. I was in a Ford Festiva driving back from a church retreat with the Reverend Jimmy Aldridge at the wheel, a wonderful man, God rest his soul, and two older kids from the youth group in the back. Now, the oldest one in the back was kind of the wild one. He was the one who was probably smoking pot in the bathroom in church before the service. I can say that because he admitted to it. And he was rock and roll. He really was. Like, I learned about Led Zeppelin through him. And he decided on the trip back, it was kind of a long trip, and he decided on the trip back that he was going to provide the entertainment. So he broke out his boombox, because it was 1983, and dropped in a cassette of this album. And he starts playing this really driving rock and roll. And I was amazed, and at the same time I was terrified, because Reverend Jimmy was not a man with whom one should trifle. He was a wonderful man, a loving man, a caring man, but a very serious demeanor if you didn't know him. And Farrell didn't ask if he could play this stuff. He just started cranking it. And I remember seeing the Reverend Jimmy just looking out the windshield. Didn't say anything, didn't respond, didn't react, didn't wince, didn't hum, didn't tap his foot, nothing. Just stone cold. And Reverend Jimmy was of the same generation as my father, the silent generation. And you didn't mess with the silent generation. The silent generation did not, nor do they play. And so I was waiting to see what would happen, and the album went through, and when the second, it was amazing music. It was some gospel tunes, kind of rocked up, some hard rocking tunes, some poppy tunes, and then Mylon delivered his testimony, and then there was sort of like the kind of altar call music. And when the cassette clicked off, I watched Reverend Jimmy, and he just goes, it sounds like old rhythm and blues music from the 60s. That's all right. And I was amazed, because here was somebody of my father's generation. And understand, my father decided that rock and roll ended with the Beatles. He thought the Beatles were the end, the ruination of rock and roll. And I was pretty sure that Reverend Jimmy felt the same way, because they both had the same greatest hits of Johnny Horton album. But here's somebody who was willing to listen to it and appreciate what he could relate to from it, even though it wasn't his cup of tea. And that's a lesson that stuck with me to this day. You don't have to like it in order to appreciate it, right? And I'm grateful to Reverend Jimmy for that lesson. So let's talk about the music for a minute. What an amazing band, right? Ben Hewitt on drums, just completely crushing. Uh, Kenny Bentley on bass, Stan Coates on keys, Scott Allen on rhythm guitar, and the secret weapon of that band, as far as I'm concerned, was Dean Harrington, the lead guitar player. Dean wrote some of the songs on this album. Dean worked with Mylon for, I want to say, 3 albums or something like that, three and a half, something. And in fact, the jam that I put on at the beginning and that pops through periodically in this was based off a song that he and Gary Hughes wrote called Freedom. And that was the one, that was the hardest driving track. That was the one, trying to explain this band to somebody, I would say, imagine if Deep Purple, the band on this album and the music of this album, imagine if Deep Purple were based in Atlanta and they were fronted by the love child of Greg Allman and Michael McDonald. And sonically, I think that's what you get. Dean, going back and listening to Dean's playing after so many years, I was kind of surprised because, like, I remember that his playing was phenomenal, and it is phenomenal. It's still phenomenal. But at the age of 14, I lumped all phenomenal guitar players in the same bucket. Dean Harrington was phenomenal. Eddie Van Halen was phenomenal. Albert Lee was phenomenal. Steve Morse was phenomenal. And Leslie West was phenomenal. But when I went back and listened, I listened to it, and his playing is still really authoritative. The guitar was just amazing. Joe Hardy engineered this album and engineered a couple of Mylon's albums. And the guitar is just on a silver platter. And I'm pretty sure he was playing a Yamaha SG-1000. If you look on YouTube, there's a video of him and Mylon playing with a band called the 77s in California. And Dean's playing a Yamaha SG-1000. On the front album cover, he's got an SG-1000. And if that's the guitar of record on that album, I need to get one of those because that thing sounds glorious. Just amazing. And I went back to listen to it and I was kind of surprised because his note choices were very deliberate. Like, looking back on it, it's like he didn't really shred. I mean, he was capable of shredding. There was the opening to Working on a Building, the opening to side 2, opened with the back half of the drum solo and a chunk of a guitar solo. And he was shredding on that. In fact, if you watch the video of him with Mylon in the 77s, when he's picking, his hand position looks a lot like Marty Friedman's, right? So, but at the same time, his note choice is really deliberate. He's not, I mean, he plays some riffs, but a lot of times he's just looking for melody, right? You can hum his guitar solos. And it really struck me, like, there's a lot of punctuation in his sentences. And that was important for me because lately I've been playing guitar like I talk. Blah, 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 blah. Just one big run-on sentence. And so Dean just amazed me. Absolutely. Now, what have I been playing it with? Well, I've been playing it with my Switch Vibracell Wild 4. Not Wild 3 or Wild 2, Wild 4. I picked this guitar up 2 years ago in Marion, Virginia at Center Stage Music. Nice place, nice people, great town. If you're ever in Marion, Virginia, go to the Sisters Cafe and have lunch or dinner. Go to the Lincoln Theater. Try and catch a show at the Lincoln Theater. It's a beautifully restored theater from the 30s. Amazing. We saw Rhonda Vincent down there that weekend. And I like to go to music stores whenever I can in towns where I'm at just to see what's going on. Now, Center Stage Music at the time, 2 years ago, was a Peavey and a Court dealer, which was kind of cool. But, like, this was hanging up in the used section for $2.25, something like that. And I always wanted to play one because, for those of you that don't know, the only thing that's wood on this is the fingerboard. All right. This is some polyester resin polymer of some sort. And I always wanted to play one. Like they came out in like 2004 or something like that, and they lasted for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, something like that. Um, and I saw it, and I was just not a fan. Like, I'm not a fan of this horn. I get they wanted a double cutaway, and at the time, Parker Fly was the new hot thing, but I think it dates it. I don't particularly like it. But I wanted to see what it felt like, and when I plugged it in, I was just. It was like skating. I was just skating. It was effortless. And it sounded good. The pickups I took out, they sound close to this, but when you crank it up, they were really harsh. There was a harsh quality about them. So these are DiMarzio's. There's a tone zone, and I forget what the other one is, and that's makes it perfect. Um, Everything else is pretty much stock on it. The pots are kind of crap, but I didn't want to drill it out because I have no idea how long this material is going to last, and I don't want to accelerate the demise of it. So I put a high pass tone cap on it with a variable resistor. It's an individual circuit that you can get so you can dial in how much the resistor works. And it works beautifully. Drop it back. You get a wide sweep, and you get to keep your high end all the way down. I love that piece of circuitry. So, what have I been thinking about? I don't know. When I started doing this again, I wanted to end it with something thoughtful, something to think about. And I thought about talking about regret or remorse. But in reflection, I don't really have anything intelligent to say about it. I mean, truth be told, if I tried, if I was lucky, the least it would be is just sound arrogant. At the most, I'd sound like an ass. wish I had something I could say. But I don't. So, I hope you're doing okay. My name's Jesse. I'll talk to you later.